Well, here we are in our fourth screencast looking at statistical significance and the chi-square. And we're at a point now where we want to start actually conducting a chi-square using some original data. And so we're going to go into that with a couple of assumptions. And when we choose to analyze our data using a chi-square test for independence, we have to make sure that the data we want to analyze passes these two assumptions. We need to do this because it is only appropriate to use the chi-square test for independence if our data passes these two assumptions. If it doesn't, we can't use the chi-square test for independence. All right? So these two assumptions are, number one, the two variables should be measured at an ordinal or nominal level. In other words, they should be categorical data. Nominal is an easy one. Ordinal we can get by with because the categories that are there can be compared. Our second assumption is that the two variables should consist of two or more categorical and independent groups. Some examples of independent variables that meet this criterion include gender, where we have male and female, ethnicity, where we have African American, Hispanic, Caucasian. If we're in the United States, we would have these. Physical activity level, which we could consider an ordinal one, but it goes from sedentary to low to moderate to high. And then other things like profession, so teacher or doctor or cashier or a construction worker. We could also look at language that's spoken, English, French, Arabic, Chinese, whatever. We could look at parents' highest level of education, etc., etc., etc. All right, so we have to meet these two assumptions moving forward in order to do the chi-square test for independence. And we're going to do our actual example using the statistical software program SPSS and a data set that comes from the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, or TIMSS. And we're going to start by going to this website. I'm going to show you where you can get this supplement, which has the international version of the TIMSS background and curriculum questionnaires. And then we're actually going to download and analyze this data, the student background data, for the 8th grade sample of students from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So if we go to the TIMSS website, we'll just start there. You see that we can get at some of the data that we need to. This is simply, I was trying to adjust this. It's timss.bc.edu, and you get to this website. Right? The most recent data for TIMSS is 2011 at this point. And if we click on the 2011 link, it takes us to this page. And we can get at the background questionnaires and the actual data by using this link, International Database, down here on the left. I click on that, and it gives me this information. I'm scrolling down. It'll give me the background questionnaire that I was looking for, and it will give me a way to download all the data in SPSS format. Okay? I'm going to take a look at the background questionnaire, so I'm going to click on Supplement 1. It will immediately download the PDF, and then I'm going to pause while I turn to the appropriate page in this booklet. So after I've scrolled down to what is page, I believe it's page 177, yeah, there I am, or 175 if you're looking at the booklet itself. I'm now on the student background questionnaire for grade 8. This is the international version, so it's not specific to any country at this point. Most countries have all of these items in there. And you can see that there's some instructions that the students had. These would have been translated into the local language for every country that participated. And then it begins with some basic information about the students. They have to answer, are you a girl or a boy? When were you born? How often do you speak the language of the test at home? So if this was being given in the United States, the question would read, how often do you speak English at home? Or if this was being given in Saudi Arabia, the question would be, how often do you speak Arabic at home? How many books are there in the home? Questions about resources that students have, and on and on and on. So you can see that this is a pretty standard questionnaire that asks questions about students, the highest level of education by their mothers and fathers. These are all these SCED levels, are standard levels that will be inserted in the final questionnaire that we would all recognize, you know, high school, started college, finished college, etc., etc. All right, and then it goes on. And if you're interested, you can click through to this website and you can get your own information. It is available here, Supplement 1, and I will hover over that. You can see that there is the, well, now when I press on it, it goes away. But when I hover over this, it pops up with the URL, the website address. So if you're interested in getting a copy of this for yourself, simply copy down that web address, pause it right now so you have time to write, and then we can move on. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go directly to downloading this data, and it's simply at this Dropbox web address. This is publicly available. Anyone can get to this data. It's data that I downloaded directly off the TIMSS website, but I thought that it would be easier if I just had one country available to anyone who is working through this screencast with me. And if I click on this, it begins to download the data for me, or it goes to the Dropbox, where it begins to download the data for me. Okay, and eventually it opens up this window. I'm going to move the screen a little bit again so that you can hopefully see everything that's on here. This is the Saudi Arabia 8th grade student background questionnaire data. And in SPSS, remember that we have two views. We have the variable view and we have the data view. And you can press on either one. The variable view simply lists all the different variables with a label for them and the values, etc. And then the data view shows the actual data for each individual participant. All right? So we have this, and we have a couple of variables that we're going to pay particular attention to, just because I'm going to use them as examples. One is the variable IT sex, and you can see that right here. It tells us the sex of students. Ooh, let me undo that. Didn't mean for that to go crazy. And you can see that it is coded 1 for girl, 2 for boy, 9 is omitted or invalid. I have already cleaned this data so that there are no 9s in this data set right now. So 1 for girl, 2 for boy. That is a categorical nominal variable that we can use in our chi-square analysis. We also should pay attention to this variable. How often do students speak the language of the test at home? In this case, it would be how often do students report speaking Arabic at home. And you can see that it is also a categorically answered variable. They say always, almost always, sometimes, or never. As I mentioned before, I've already cleaned this data, so there are no 9s for omitted or invalid data left in the data set for BSBG03, which is the variable name for language spoken in home. We also can scroll way down to the bottom of the data set, and let me just get there. And we'll see that there's a variable called BSDG EDUP, yeah, which is parents' highest education level, and it is coded this way. University or higher, post-secondary but not university, upper secondary, lower secondary, some primary. And then some others that we can omit, not applicable, logically not applicable, omitted, or invalid. So there will be no, I've already fixed this, there will be no 6s or 96s or 99s that are in this data set, so we don't have to worry about that. But just to check, and maybe I made a mistake, so it's always good to check, we can run frequencies for each of these 3 categorical variables that I've just mentioned and begin to look at whether or not they actually have been recoded in a way that makes sense and that everything works out fine. So in order to run those frequencies, we're going to go up here to where it says Analyze, and then we're going to go down to Descriptive Statistics and Frequencies, and I'm going to press on that. Right? And you can see I was already doing some of this stuff before, but let me reset. One way to do is to scroll through, and it automatically displays the variable labels in this window. So that's part of our issue. But if you hover over them, it'll show you in those square brackets what the actual variable name is. This is IT sex. That's one of the ones that we were interested in. We're also interested in BSBG 03, which is that they often speak the language of the test at home. So I'm going to move that over. And then remember at the very bottom we had our variable about parents. I think I just passed it. Parents' highest level of education. Right? BSDGEDUP. So I'm going to move that over. And all I want is frequencies. So I'm going to say OK. And it will give me the frequencies. And we can see that for IT sex, 1 is girl, 2 is boy. For how often they speak the language of the test at home, 1 is always, 2 is almost always, 3 is sometimes, 4 is never. For parents' highest education level, we have 1 is university or higher, 2 is post-secondary but not university, 3 is upper secondary, 4 is lower secondary, 5 is some primary, lower secondary, or no school. All right, so those are the categories that we have. We have data in all of those. Now we can start doing some chi-square. So if we wanted to do a chi-square, if we wanted to think about where a relationship might be, let's pick 2 variables, right? Because that's what chi-square is doing. It's relationships between 2 categorical, which means ordinal or nominal variables. In this case, we have 1 nominal variable, IT sex, the sex of students, and then we have 2 ordinal variables. They're all categorical, but you can see some differences. So we could say, all right, is there an association between the sex of students and whether or not they speak the language of the test at home? Is there a relationship between whether they speak the language of the test at home and their parents' highest education level? Or is there a relationship between student sex and parents' highest education level? All of them are interesting, but let's choose one that we can just focus on. And I'm going to suggest that we do actually the 2 ordinal ones. How often do they speak the language of test at home, and parents' highest education level to start with. We've got lots of categories here, but they're all categorical independent groups within each of these 2 ordinal categorical variables. All right, so we'll do a chi-square between BSBG03 and BSDGEDUP. Very exciting so far, right? Okay, I'm going to pause, and we're going to come back in the next screencast and actually do this chi-square analysis using SPSS.